Well, it's raining pretty good here, so I'm not sure if I can talk over the noise on the canopy. And this isn't so much a how-to as notes on what I did. Okay, this is a 2006 Nissan Altima with a 2.5, and according to online, other videos and that stuff, they are notorious for getting air trapped in the heater, and then you have to burp the system. And there's ways you can do it where you vacuum the system down. You know, one guy took the overflow tank and held it up, and then he put a piece of wire in the cap here to force it to not seal so it would go into that. I've tried several things, and I had a heck of a time getting the thing to burp. The problem was there was no heat in the interior. Okay, the engine heated up, temperature came up, everything looked fine engine-wise. Okay, so I bought this thing used, and one issue was, when I started looking, was I pulled the hose off, stuck a bore scope in there, and found out that they put the radiator, or the thermostat. This is the water control valve. The thermostat is actually down here, okay? So this thermostat, in both cases, the springs go toward the engine, okay? The hose gets the short side, and these have weep holes. I'm not sure how well all of this is showing up or whatever, but there's a weep hole there. This one's got a little valve on it, but anyway, those weep holes go up, okay, to help release any trapped air and that stuff. This longer one goes in the front one, and the way the housing is it won't fit in backwards, okay? But the one in the water control valve over here will fit in backwards, and it was put in backwards. And so since there was no water flowing against the spring, you know, on this side, it never really opened. So, plus he had a 20-pound radiator cap on. I don't know why. I thought I was getting a killer deal with this thing. One owner car. You know, the guy seemed to have enough money. It was his wife's car, so I figured, hey, he paid for all the maintenance. No, he did the maintenance himself. And the more I'm digging in, the more I'm finding out that the maintenance wasn't up to par, up to standard. So anyway, let's see here. I don't want to make this too long, and I don't really want to have to do a ton of editing. So what I did, I took the old radiator cap, the 20-pound one, and I modified it. I ground the rivet off and stuff like that and pried the cap off. So what it is it seals to that rubber to the top of the radiator, but it has an open circuit into the overflow. So that way, if it was going to do any burping, it didn't have to overcome the pressure of the radiator cap to come out, okay? So that was one thing that helped. Plus, too, because a lot of times you can just leave that off, run the engine until it burps, but it blows fluid all over the place. The engine's still wet from me doing that the other day. So this was, I think that was a pretty good alternative to burping it open and some of the others. And if you're going to replace the radiator cap, just modify the other one. Now, I had it idling for the longest time, and I revved it up a couple times and that stuff. And this radiator hose was the first to get warm. The lower one, it took a while, okay? And then the two hoses going to the heater, you can reach them down here. And one got a little warm, but you can tell the further you got to the heater, the colder it got. And the bottom hose, which is basically the return from the heater. Anyway, whichever one it was, I'm just grabbing both of them down in here, okay? And the top one is hotter than the bottom one, and the bottom one was cold. So that told me there was still air in there and not letting it flow through the heater. Plus, too, I could feel in the vent that it was still blowing cold air. So what I did, they definitely have better ways of clamping these hoses, okay, with better clamps and stuff like that. So the thermostat is in there, but there's bypass around that. So it just lets more fluid in. I'm not exactly sure, but what I did was somebody had recommended pulling this hose, or maybe it was the other one of the two hoses, and putting a garden hose to it and pushing fluid through it. I was too lazy to do that, so what I did was I took my hemostats here and I clamped this hose closed. My thought process was that any pressure that was going back into the radiator, any flow there, would force the flow into the heater core, okay? idling, it didn't change anything. But once I went in and revved it up to 2,500 RPMs, 3,000 RPMs, and held it there for a little bit, all of a sudden I started feeling some warmth in that stuff. And when I came out, the fluid had dropped in the reservoir. Let's see, anything else? It's not that hard to change these, and there's other videos that go through and show that just fine. If you turn the key on or start the car or whatever with anything disconnected, it'll throw a code, so make sure you got a scanner or something like that to reset the codes. But the big thing was clamping off the flow here to go in there, and then I did end up having to top it off again once it burped. It took a few more cups. I didn't measure it, so I don't exactly know. So it's been off for a minute. It's down below the min, so I may end up having to put a little bit more in. But I bought a kit at Napa under 20 bucks, and it had both thermostats and the gasket. Okay, so not a bad deal. I asked him if it was, you know, OEM, because the two thermostats, one was at the dealer, they wanted 30 or 45 bucks for one of them, and 70 for the other. That I mean, huge numbers. So this was 20 bucks. These are the old ones. Anyway, so the kit had both, and I asked him if they were, you know, OEM quality, if they were the best brand, and he said they were Stant. Stant's a decent brand. I was like, okay, awesome. I get them, I look at them, and, you know, sure as shit, the new ones say Motor Rad on them, just like the other ones. So Motor Rad may be good, but Motor Rad is typically the cheapest brand Rock Auto sells, so it doesn't give me a huge I don't think they're as good as OEM. People online on videos have recommended spend the money on the OEM, but theirs weren't 70 bucks a piece either. So okay, so if you do get the kit and you got the two, the hotter one, the 203, goes as the water control valve in the upper one, back of the head there. This one goes down in the front. It's 180, I think. Other than that, it's typical maintenance stuff. You know, you take certain things apart, clean the surfaces, stuff like that, make sure they're all nice and dry, and put them back together. So I don't have any dripping. I am going to put the new radiator cap on and take it out for a drive, and then I'm going to let it sit, cool off overnight. I'll check it again tomorrow and see where the level's sitting and stuff like that, and make sure that when it fires up and warms up that I have heat still. So, and one last thought while I'm doing this, I buy premix antifreeze, okay, because 50-50, I'm in Oregon. This is a somewhat temperate climate. It doesn't get extremely cold like Alaska, and it doesn't get extremely hot, you know, like Southern California, Arizona, and that stuff. So if you have to custom mix, you know, for like a 70-30 mix or something like that, then you're not going to want to buy premix. But you really need to put distilled water in this system to combat corrosion, as opposed to just using tap water or garden hose water and that stuff. So if you want to deal with the headache of going and buying distilled water and stuff like that and mixing it and all that kind of crap, you know, hey, go ahead. But these days it's so easy and convenient to just get the premix that I just go that route. I'm lazy. It was kind of annoying because when I bought the last 2 gallons at Napa yesterday, they charged me twice. So instead of $10 a gallon for 2 gallons, I got charged for 4 gallons. So I spent 40 bucks instead of 20 bucks. And when I got home and opened one of them up, one of them was already an inch low and the seal was gone. So somebody returned a gallon of antifreeze, and Napa didn't bother to look to see if it was full or not. So shame on Napa. Usually they're pretty good. They helped me with my truck and another product. But anyway, that's another story. So.